A review copy was provided by Capcom. This review will contain spoilers for Resident Evil 4 Remake and the original game. Resident Evil 4 is one of Capcom's most acclaimed games of all time, selling millions of copies and often considered one of the best games in the Resident Evil franchise, while also being one of the most influential games of its generation. Remaking such a legendary title wouldn't be easy, especially considering that Resident Evil 4, the original game, still holds up today, but like Dead Space, the developers succeeded in this Herculean task, creating a brand new experience from the original Resident Evil 4 edifice, but improving on many aspects that the original was lacking, such as story and characterization. The core narrative of Resident Evil 4's story remains unchanged. Like with the other remakes of Resident Evil 2 and Resident Evil 3, Capcom does not alter any major events that the original established. Leon has been sent to Europe to search for the president's daughter Ashley, who was kidnapped from her university. Quickly, Leon finds out that the natives are hostile and acting like the infected from Raccoon City, only smarter. Leon will find out that an infection has taken control of the surrounding populace, and in the center is a deadly cult with plans of world domination. Unlike the original, which kept a campy B-rated movie tone to its narrative, Capcom decided to go in a much darker route. The box art alone conveys this, just look at the two games side by side. This doesn't mean Leon doesn't come with his smart mouth locked and loaded. The elite trained agent still cracks jokes and makes light of the situation, but it's in a much more tasteful way to complement the tone of the remake. Leon isn't the only character given some changes. Ashley has been altered for a more mature outlook, and she definitely feels like a person. She's still terrified of the entire situation, but her relationship with Leon is better established. Leon and Ashley grow together through difficult ordeals that showcase this is more than just a mission to Leon. He does care about Ashley on a personal level, and he showcases this, such as in this scene.
Something else.
Oh, she must have been terrifying. I know.
You too?
It's okay to be afraid, you know. But you can't run. You gotta keep moving forward. We will beat this. Together.
I don't know if I can.
You can. Just give me a heads up before you stab me next time, okay?
Leon, thanks.
Like in Resident Evil 2 Remake, Leon made it clear that he joined the police to help people. Leon still believes in that despite all the hardships and deaths he's experienced throughout the events of not only Raccoon City, but also seeing the infected as victims as well. Lewis and Krauser have also gone through some changes. Like with Ashley, the relationship between Lewis and Leon is given more time to flesh out. Leon learns of Lewis's past and spends actual time with the researcher, learning of his motives, and even his death is done better because of these changes. Unlike the original, where the antagonist Sadler just comes out of nowhere and kills Lewis, as Leon dreads his death despite barely knowing the guy, Lewis fully established that he regrets his past choices, and while he's willing to part with a deadly sample of the parasite for his own personal safety, he's trying to make amends for the deaths that he's caused. He goes above and beyond for Leon and Ashley to try and save their lives, despite having no obligation to do so. Krauser is also much more established here, where you had to play the Dark Side Chronicles to fully establish his character in the original Resident Evil 4. Here, he's shown to be more than just a power-hungry mercenary. Here we learn that Krauser went off the deep end because of reasons that are established within the game, suffering from a combination of survivor's guilt and being betrayed by the government he swore allegiance to. In his final moments, you can see that Krauser wanted to die just like his men as a soldier, respecting Leon for finally putting him down. Ada returns as well, still cocky and overconfident, but different. I know there's a lot of controversy about the voice actor they chose for it, but I mean, I thought she did an adequate job. Yes, the original Ada Wong still did a vastly better job, but I'm not going to really complain about this that much. It's clear that Leon's righteousness is rubbing off on her, and she's more importantly clearer about her feelings towards Leon. Thanks to better facial recognition, you can see Ada's feelings for Leon seep out more, and her motives are a little more clear in the after credits scene than in the original game, where she kind of just keeps that cocky, overconfident tone, so her ideals are kind of better shadowed, but they also don't really show that the characters evolve in that well. The biggest change that doesn't help the narrative is a lack of personal calls between Leon and the villains. Instead, all the characters you speak to are allies of Leon, such as Lewis, Hunnigan, and Ada. This means that the main villain, Sadler, is often only shown in very specific scenes. If this is your first playthrough of Resident Evil 4, I wouldn't be surprised if you've forgotten who the main villain is. Ramon still has plenty of banter to engage with Leon, but he has a lot more time between Leon than Sadler does. Unlike the original, where he's depicted as a spoiled child with psychopathic tendencies, here Ramon is in more line of a mature man with serial killer vibes. He's a much more established person where he understands what he's doing, he doesn't care, whereas in the original he just comes off as a petulant brat.
Where's the satisfying sound of one's impalement?
Don't fall for this old trick.
How dare you! No more games! Kill him! Kill!
Overall, despite the lack of communication between Leon and the villains, the changes to the story is greatly enhanced by the overall experience, from Ashley and Leon's bond, Krauser's backstory, and Lewis being more involved and engaging with the narrative, so you feel more attached to these characters as you go through the narrative. With the exception of Sadler, which he doesn't appear until, heck, you don't even learn about Sadler until the last third of the game. They finally establish who this person is. They do showcase him in brief periods of the parasite trying to infect and take control of Leon and Ashley, but I felt like this could have been better established. Maybe they tried, but they just couldn't fit him in. The mobility in Resident Evil 4 is the best it's ever been in the Resident Evil franchise. Leon is much faster and more nimble than he's ever been before. In fact, this is the ideal third-person controls for the Resident Evil franchise. The biggest addition is the inclusion of stealth and parrying. Leon can thin the herd by sneaking into an area and using a one-hit stealth kill, but the sneaking is basic. You can crouch and attack enemies from behind, but you cannot regain your stealth status once found, and enemies range from nearsighted to seeing you across the map. Since your knife and weaker knives you pick up from the environment have durability limits, you can only kill for a certain amount of time before it breaks. Despite being a specially trained agent, Leon cannot break someone's neck, which I assume is for balancing issues. Once in active combat, the gameplay changes into a third-person shooter. You can create shortcuts for each of your weapons and swap them out in combat. Your knife can be used for parrying enemies and melee strikes. While they are in this period of vulnerability, there is a white circle that appears showcasing you can trigger a type of melee strike, which is very powerful. When enemies die, they can trigger a mutation. This comes in several varieties that you encounter as you progress through the game. The first causes an enemy to revive itself stronger and more aggressively, similar to the Crimson Heads from the original Resident Evil games. The others include variations of the parasite sprouting from the victim's head, including a basic blade, a variation where the parasite actually leaps from the victim's body, and a parasite variant that can kill you in one hit if you're not careful. The enemies are smart and will take advantage of their large numbers. This includes flanking, throwing objects, grabbing Leon, which you can break by using your knife or, using a quick time event to break their hold, and holding Leon for another enemy to attack. You can't shoot body parts off enemies and they'll keep coming or crawl towards Leon after suffering a fatal blow, but these crawl animations are mainly cosmetic for them to just grasp on into their life. It's still very well done to add immersion. The enemy diversity continues to evolve over time, with more infected mutating using tools like shields or having added protections like helmets and body armor. This is not including the other enemies you'll encounter such as dogs, insects, and the popular Regenerator, which has seen a massive update and is far more deadlier than the original. Each one is deadly in its own way and requires you to take them seriously or end up dead. Resident Evil 4 Remake is just as challenging as the original, with several difficulties available. This includes casual, normal, hardcore, which are available at the beginning, and then of course professional difficulty, which unlocks at the New Game Plus scenario. But if you want to get S Plus ranking, you need to play the game fresh. You can't use New Game Plus, but you can play the game as many times as you want with New Game Plus, where your weapons and other items carry over, including treasure. Speaking of Dead, Capcom took notes from Dead Space and included some of the most graphic deaths in a Resident Evil game. I won't show them at a risk of being demonetized, but dear God, Capcom really did their research and they went the extra mile here. In fact, there are some really just deadly deaths in this game. That being said, some of the enemies can feel tanky at times unless you have a fully upgraded weapon. In addition, the rate of enemy mutations is very high here, like in Resident Evil 6, where in the original these encounters were rare. That offered split second thinking, because when it happened you needed to engage with the enemy in a new type of way. You can use flash grenades, of course, still in order to flash the enemies and kill them instantly, since the parasites are vulnerable to this, but the game actually explained this to you instead of you finding out through trial and error. However, I think it's also due to the dynamic difficulty. I didn't really notice because I guess I played the same way during my multiple playthroughs of the game, but I always felt like the mutations were absurdly high, especially during the end game. So you can pick off mutating enemies by shooting them in the leg. If the enemy isn't going to mutate, they'll just take normal damage, but if the damage is reduced, seeing that you hit them with a rifle and their leg didn't pop off, you can tell they're going to mutate. So there are tiny details to determine which enemy will mutate and which will not. The developers did combat this by providing an option to make ammo, but this is a limited feature. Using gunpowder and one of two resource options, you can craft a variety of ammo options or grenades. However, the game keeps track of how much ammo you can have, and sometimes it will supply you with a lot of ammo if you're running low, but once you reach that invisible limit that the game is tracking, it'll stop giving you ammo, instead give you money in exchange for the ammo, which I think is a really good idea. I found that once I hit a limit of 60 handgun bullets, the game would actually stop giving me handgun bullets, and then when I reached below a certain amount, I would start getting ammo more frequently. You can auto-sort your items, which is a huge lifesaver, but if you're a traditionalist, you don't have to use it. I saw people complain about this, but I thought this was an incredible option. Now you don't have to constantly have to sort everything out, just hit a button and there, it's all sorted for you. Managing weapons, healing items, ammo, and crafting items still is a huge deal in this game, and it's especially important during the end game where items are very much limited. The game definitely gives you a lot less items during the finale of the game, which is a little weird considering you'll fight some of the most powerful enemies during the end game. The game does include the Resident Evil 2 Remake map system, where rooms with items will appear red and turn blue when everything is looted. Items will appear if Leon walks by an item, but for the most part you'll have to locate them, meaning that you'll have to go next to them, a prompt will appear, then the item will appear. So you can't just, look around the room and it will automatically appear. Now let's talk about everyone's favorite person, the merchant. The legendary giver of weapons is back again. He's willing to exchange money and treasures for weapons, improving your existing weapons and gear. The merchant operates mostly the same as the original. You get money and he'll trade you weapons and upgrades for it. Now you can obtain treasure and now fit them with gems to increase their value, making gems a lot more valuable, and how you fit them yielding a lot more money. The merchant has a new trade option where you can get Spindle gems and exchange them for unique items such as treasure maps, weapons, gear, and even other treasures. Added to the mix, it's a shooting range made available during specific sections of the game where you can earn tokens by beating challenges for case trinkets that add bonuses such as increased healing, better deals. You can equip 3 of them to your case, but you can also get duplicates that you can't equip to your case, so you just sell them back to the merchant. I guess this is just to artificially increase the amount of trinkets that are available, but it can get really annoying in order to get the rarer trinkets when you're constantly getting these common trinkets. And since they're separated based on what tokens you get, with bronze, silver, and gold, it can become incredibly annoying when you have to constantly do this in order to get the best trinkets. The knife is maintained through the merchant alongside the body armor option. In the original, these were infinite use items, but now you have durability to deal with. Considering how much the body armor absorbs in damage and the knife's parrying options, it's understandable that Capcom will want to balance these items. The body armor could absorb up to 100% of damage if the damage is heavy enough, so obviously they would want to balance that out, and you can parry a lot of things in this game, so of course they're going to make sure you can't just blast through the game with these options. Now, there is an infinite use knife that you get through the bonus options that I'll discuss later, but that's more of a bonus weapon that you can use just to have fun with. You'll have to maintain your knife and body armor, which are expensive to deal with. The tune-up system works the same. Players can upgrade their weapons into tiers with an exclusive option available after upgrading every single tier. The developers did tone down the power of some weapons such as the rifle, but did boost certain other weapons like the shotgun, which has seen a huge boost. Now, you are limited up based on how much ammo you can get for these weapons, such as the Magnum. You'll be lucky to find any Magnum ammo throughout the game, and it can become a bit distressing when you have to save up a lot of these more powerful weapons, but it does make sense that enemies will drop more money than ammo, seeing that there are a lot of these upgrades that require a lot of money in order to upgrade. However, the game will give you more ammo depending on the circumstances, such as boss fights, as I explained earlier in the review. The side quests are optional missions given to you by the merchant that mostly involves busy work such as shooting medals, fighting more powerful variants of existing enemies, or getting a specific key item. It does flesh out the merchant's character, as it shows that he doesn't have any love for the cult in the area and will give you very powerful items in exchange for killing them or, screwing up their entire organization. As for the areas you will explore, Capcom has remixed and shifted the layout for the three major areas you will explore: the village, castle, and island, and include not only a combination of original areas, sometimes remixed, or entire newly set pieces for the remake. You're encouraged to explore not only the optional collectibles, but files that help flesh out the story, such as learning about the village chief and Ramon's caretaker. The only real issue I have with the controls is picking up items. Since A is linked between picking up items and interacting with objects, you can run into situations where you'll climb down a ladder when you're trying to pick something up and quickly get out of a fight when you're trying to engage with the enemy. I would argue that an auto pickup system for money in the future would resolve this, and spamming the interact button would cause players to become extremely annoyed very quickly. You're going to pick up a lot of money in this game, and having to hit the interact button constantly would be very annoying. I know some purists will say, well, this is a survival horror game, but I would say just limit it to money, because you're always going to need money, and that's something everyone's going to keep picking up. As for QuickTime events, they've been removed mostly. You can still have the occasional button prompt to evade enemies, but these are rare. However, you cannot evade enemies when performing an animation such as opening a door. It doesn't seem like a big deal, but when you're facing Ramon's right hand, it becomes a nightmare, since you need to have precise movement to avoid this enemy in a fight, and he's extremely dangerous on professional difficulty. Thankfully, the game does include a New Game Plus, like I stated, and you can endlessly cycle between New Game Plus, even go into professional mode in New Game Plus. But if you want that S Plus rank in order to get some of the exclusive items within the game, you're going to have to play the game on New Game Fresh in order to get them. There's the same unlock system from Resident Evil 2 and 3 Remake, where you complete challenges in order to earn challenge points, which unlock concept art, animations, and specially used weapons. There are also a diverse collection of cosmetics for both Ashley and Leon, where you can use them in an array of situations, which I think is brilliant. The original had some costumes, but here you can mix and match an array of options, which I think is brilliant. Resident Evil 4 Remake has a much more darker tone than the original. It pairs exceedingly well with the dialogue, voice acting, and animation from the original. Mostly, Capcom does not shy away from the graphic material Resident Evil is notorious for, such as horrifying mutations and dark journal entries from those who lived in the area before the infection. The animations are exceptional, with enemies responding to different types of attacks, and Leon doing the same. The boss fights are grand affairs against deadly opponents that have been generally improved on, especially against the fight with Ramon. Every encounter feels like a fight for survival, and some new additions like the Minecraft section are generally thrilled to play through. Despite the dark tones, the writers knew when to add some goofy fun into the game to offset the more darker elements. The soundtrack takes inspiration from the original, with a lot of great remixes and original tracks that pair well with everything in the game. Dynamic music keeps the action intense and complements the intense boss fights, whether it's a close knife fight against Krauser or a massive fight against El Gigante. This is the best optimized AAA game I've played in a long time. I need to stretch this because I've played so many games that were just so terribly optimized that I have to give it to Capcom. Thank you for going the extra mile. I know that seems like, it should be the status quo, but so many AAA developers release games in unpolished states. Everything runs so well, I experienced no crashes, and occasionally I would have the strange animation, characters get caught in the texture. It's not a big deal. It's actually pretty hilarious. I know this should be, again, a status quo for AAA developers, but I constantly worry about this for every new releases. The only real issue I have with the technical stability of the game is that load times can be a little long and spotty at times, such as the second big fight against Krauser. The load time can be a little longer than other portions of the game, so I guess maybe it's faster in other versions of the game. For the Xbox Series X version, it's a bit on the slow side. It's nothing too issue or problematic with it. Resident Evil 4 Remake is an exceptional remake of the original. It doesn't trample on the original and instead gives an alternate take on this legendary adventure. Similar to Dead Space Remake or Resident Evil 2 2019, it modernizes many of the systems that haven't aged well, like the QuickTime events and the movement system. It expands on the narrative in many ways, explaining the death of Lewis's guild, of being responsible for what happened to the villagers, and his time in Umbrella, Krauser's fall, for those who didn't play the Wii Darkside Chronicles, and given Ashley and Leon's bond a more believable arc. That being said, I can see those who enjoy the more campy nature of the original feeling offset by the more serious tone, but taken in conjunction with the remake of Resident Evil 2, it feels more in line with Leon's attitude, attempting to find a place of helping people despite having the odds against him, while also affected by the events of Raccoon City. We definitely see growth with Leon, where he's not as naive as he was in Resident Evil 2 2019, while at the same time still carries that sense of self-justice, where he's constantly tested whether this is the path he wants to take, considering the world is constantly against him and constantly feeds him new trauma to deal with. The gameplay is a lot more fluid, and considering that Capcom is hinted at a Resident Evil 5 remake, I can see those same options being implemented for some sick cooperative action. Regardless, Capcom nailed it. This is an outstanding remake of the original game, and even if you come in this without any knowledge of the original game, you'll have a blast playing this game. It has my highest recommendation, and this year is looking absolutely stellar for survival horror fans. First, we got the Dead Space remake, and Capcom nailed it with the Resident Evil 4 remake. Go play this game. It is exceptional, and I can't wait for the post-launch content. We're already going to get the Mercenaries mode, and there's a heavy hint that we're going to get Ada Wong's exclusive DLC. Cannot wait for it. I don't know if we're going to get Assignment Ada, but it's heavily hinted that we'll get separate ways. Either way, exceptional job, great job, Capcom. Go get this game.